The world is a strange and terrifying place. Out in the wild, anything can happen. Brace yourselves as we explore the strange wilderness.
Somewhere on the great expanse of debauchery and memes that we call the internet, there exists an image. It's a simple iceberg, though it has been used as a basis for creating tiered lists of a number of different topics. Today, we're stepping away from our usual programmed content so that I can guide you down the rabbit hole for one of these topics. This is Matt from Strange Wilderness, and this is my horribly written, possibly incoherent deep dive into the cryptid iceberg. I will be choosing 5 lesser-known cryptids from each tier and will present them over an 8-episode series. With all of that said, enjoy. And I'm sorry. This is Tier 3. Number 1. This is a long one, so bear with me. Spring-heeled Jack is so much more than the name given to a D-list wrestler. For real. This bizarre amalgamation of Batman and Satan was said to sport quite the frightful appearance, featuring clawed hands, a devilish facade, a heavy black cloak, and eyes that were said to resemble red balls of fire. He's also been said to breathe blue and white flames, so add dragon to the mixture. Many consider him a devil in a terrible disguise, considering his getup was more demon-like than human, while he tormented England for more than 60 years. Yes, you heard that right. For more than 6 decades, this cryptid gallivanted around England, attacking women, jumping on rooftops, and, well, was just generally a menace. Reports of spring-heeled Jack attacks first appeared in 1837. It was said that the menace would ring a doorbell, and if and when a woman would answer, he would pounce, tearing at their clothing with metal claws. Other incidents had Jack ambushing people while out walking throughout the area. Polly Adams was attacked while walking across Blackheath in South London, and Mary Stevens was said to be scared witless by what she experienced. Get this. As she was walking to Lavender Hill, a strange figure leapt at her from a dark alley. He quickly took a tight grip of her, began to kiss her face, and tore at her clothes with hands she described as being cold and clammy, like a corpse. In a panic, and to nobody's surprise, Mary screamed, causing her attacker to flee. The next day, this same attacker was said to strike again, this time jumping in the way of a passing carriage, causing the coachman to crash, leaving him severely injured. Witnesses to this bizarre turn of events claimed that the fiend then leapt over a 9-foot wall to escape, cackling a high-pitched, ringing laugh. It was 1837, and since I'm not a time-traveling possible lizard man, I cannot confirm nor deny that Spring-heeled Jack is in fact Robbie Rotten from Lazytown. Spring-heeled Jack was formally recognized in January of 1838, when the Lord Mayor of London, Sir John Cowan, revealed at a public session that he had received an anonymous complaint days earlier that read, quote, "It appears that some individuals of, as the writer believes, the highest ranks of life, have laid a wager with a mischievous and foolhardy companion that he durst not take upon himself the task of visiting many of the villagers near London in 3 different disguises: a ghost, a bear, and a devil, and moreover, that he will not enter a gentleman's gardens for the purpose of alarming the inmates of the house. The wager has, however, been accepted, and the unmanly villain has succeeded in depriving 7 ladies of their senses, 2 of whom are not likely to recover, but to become burdens to their families. At one house, the man rang the bell, and on the servant coming to open the door, this worse than brute stood in no less dreadful figure than a spectre clad most perfectly. The consequences was that the poor girl immediately swooned, and has never from that moment been in her senses. The affair has now been going on for some time, and, strange to say, the papers are silent on the subject. The writer has reason to believe that they have the whole history at their finger ends, but, through interested motives, are induced to remain silent. End quote. That was a mouthful. Jane Alsop was also attacked in February of 1838. Answering the door, she encountered someone who claimed to be a police officer, stating, quote,
"We've caught SPRINGHEEL Jack here in the lane."
End quote. As she brought and later handed him a candle, it was said that the figure threw off his cloak and attacked. Jane was nearly strangled to death in her own home before her family managed to beat off her attacker. Now listen, by beat off, I mean they chose violence. Get your mind out of the gutter, okay? Okay. After being attacked, the mysterious fiend was said to leap up and soar into the darkness. Jane described her attacker to London magistrates by stating, quote, "He was wearing a kind of helmet and tight-fitting white costume, like an oilskin, and he vomited blue and white flames." End quote. Jack the Spider-Man continued this reign of terror well into the 1870s, culminating with one of his most famous sightings. In 1877, a sentry in Aldershot Garrison spotted a peculiar figure advancing toward him. This figure ignored all challenges and, after reaching the sentry, proceeded to bitch slap the poor sap several times. We here at Strange Wilderness feel that we speak for everyone when we ask, how can he slap? A guard then shot at the figure, to no visible effect, and upon being shot, the figure disappeared into the darkness with astonishing bounds. Listen, whether or not Spring-Heeled Jack is in fact a cryptid, or just a really fit dude with kangaroo legs and a love for steampunk, he is quite possibly the world's first troll, and you have to admit, he definitely got his fill of lulls during the 1800s. Number 2. Black-Eyed Children, or Black-Eyed Kids, are not a rebooted music group set to replace the aging Black Eyed Peas. No, 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 don't lie. These cryptids are pretty much what their name describes. They are said to resemble children between the ages of 6 and 16, with pale skin, jet black eyes, out-of-date clothing, and are often encountered at the front door of one's home, though not always. In 1996, Brian Bethel described that while parked in a lot by a movie theater, he heard a tap at his car window. He turned to see 2 boys standing by this window. At this point, an intense wave of unease overtook Bethel, though he could not discern why. Now, this is actually a common feeling said to be sparked by BEKs, with those who encounter them describe being overwhelmed by fear and dread. At this point, the older of the 2 boys spoke, saying that he and his brother were looking for a ride home to grab some money to catch a movie, and then asked if Bethel could give them a ride. They assured him it wouldn't take long, and, get this, that they didn't have a gun. This was a weird thing to add, considering these were literal children, not small people who happened to look like children. But when I tell you that this all took place in Texas, it might make a little more sense? I don't know. I'm Canadian, so this is still weird as hell for me, eh? Anyway, it was late, most likely past the little twerp's bedtimes, and so Bethel mentioned that in the time it would take them to drive to grab the money and then drive back to the theater, the last showing of the day would have already started. This apparently frustrated the older boy, causing him to state that they couldn't get in the car unless Bethel gave them explicit permission to do so. Are BEKs vampires? Next time you see a black-eyed kid, throw some garlic at them and get back to me, because I need to know for science. Whatever. Per Bethel's account, when he broke eye contact with the boy, their eyes became completely black, and at this point, his fear made like Spinal Tap and went to 11, causing him to panic and peel out of the parking lot. Listen, I understand that kids are weird and scary creatures, so I completely stand by Bethel's actions here. Don't yell at him too much. This account is incredibly similar to all alleged encounters with BEKs, with the victims stating that they experience overwhelming dread and fear, having the kids, who are often avoiding eye contact, ask them for something in a monotonous voice, often access inside their home for some otherwise benign reason, and when the victim either questions the kids or refuses, it is said that they then look directly at the victim, putting their big blacks on display. Since it's often reported that the kids are dressed in strange, out-of-date clothing, we here at Strange Wilderness posit that they likely asked the victim something along the lines of, quote,
"Golly gee, it seems that while my pals and I were playing the popular game of push the wheel with the stick, we went out and pushed the darn wheel too hard, causing it to tumble down the hill away from us. Gee, mister, can we come in and use your telegraph to tell our ma and pa to bring us a new wheel?"
End quote. I don't know old-timey lingo, so that's what you get. Sorry. Anyway, if you ever encounter a BEK at your home, do us a favor and let them in, because I am super curious as to what happens when you do. Some of you may die, but that's a risk I'm willing to take. Number 3. The White River Monster is said to be a large, fish-like, lizard-like, something or rather like critter that stalks the White River near Newport in Arkansas. Alright, sidebar and serious question. Americans pronounce Kansas like how I just said, but Arkansas is literally spelled the same with AR in front. So why, in the name of the great celestial smurf, isn't it pronounced Arkansas? I'm not dumb, I swear, I'm just curious. Anyway, back on track. The White River Monster, given the totally creative, super original nickname Whitey, is said to have gray skin, a horn sticking out from its forehead, though other reports say it has spikes along its back, and 3-toed, 14-inch feet, and has allegedly been spotted since 1915, though some say it may have actually affected the outcome of the Civil War. I wish I was joking. The story goes that the White River was used for transportation, and that the monster was supposedly responsible for overturning a boat passing through the area. Like I said during the Spring-Heeled Jack segment, I'm one of the possible lizard men who was not blessed with the gift of time travel, so I cannot confirm nor deny that this is true. Come to your own conclusions, I guess. On July 1st in 1937, Bramlett Bateman, no relation with Jason Bateman, allegedly saw the monster, describing it as being, quote, "as wide as a car and 3 cars long." End quote. So, suffice to say, Ol' Whitey is an absolute unit. As news of the monster spread, a massive rope net was commissioned in attempts to capture the cryptid. The net was never finished though, because money and materials ran out, and more likely, people realized how bat poop Looney Tunes it was to build a giant net to capture what was probably a giant moldy mattress or something. Whitey went dark for a time, resurfacing in 1971. Along with seeing the creature, many reported seeing the earlier mentioned three-toed footprints in the mud along the White River area. Apparently, they were spotted around crushed vegetation and broken trees, so naturally the locals chalked it up to Whitey being large and in charge, stumbling through the area to get away from the H2O for a bit. Get this, in 1973, the White River Monster Refuge was created. This is a very real, legitimately not made up thing, signed into law by State Senator Robert Harvey, and makes it illegal to harm the creature inside the confines of the refuge. Arkansas, you've earned yourself an Owen Wilson wow. Congrats. There haven't been any recent sightings, though some researchers believe that Whitey is either a massive, possibly mutated fish, likely the work of one C. Montgomery Burns, or an elephant seal, though nobody can be certain. Whatever the critter is, next time you pass by the White River, be sure to leave your favorite Civil War memorabilia so Ol' Whitey can relive his glory days. Number 4. SANTER is not just a stupid way of saying Santa. Really. Like, actually really. Anyhoosers, SANTER, also known as the Wampus, not to be mistaken with Wumpus from Discord, is a mysterious feline that is commonly seen in North Carolina. It is described as having a long body, what like them ferrets have, with reddish, sometimes gray hair, a large, bald head with small eyes for some reason, long legs, and a tail that is said to have 8 hard knots, resembling a string of beads. It allegedly knows the Pokemon move Tail Whip, though instead of being a useless move to decrease an opponent's defense stat, it pimp slaps cattle or other livestock, and can apparently knock them out cold with one whip. That's a mighty strong tail, if you ask me. SANTER is believed to live in wooded swamps, close to small villages that typically keep large quantities of bait, I mean livestock. Its cry apparently sounds like a baby wailing, which, if you ask me, is far more annoying than it is scary. I mean, have you been on a plane with a baby? Anyway, while SANTER is typically a menace to local livestock and pets, it has been said to also attack children. In 1890, a police officer claimed to have shot at it while it was chasing a dog. It was later said to have eaten 7 pigs and 15 cows, meaning the beast looks at your livestock like how I look at sushi. Go figure. A hunting party was quickly formed to catch SANTER, but came up empty, because of course they did. Despite this, they apparently saw tracks belonging to SANTER, describing them as being 8 inches long and 4 inches wide, with the hind tracks resembling those of a bear. Also in 1890, a possum hunter allegedly heard SANTER's baby screams, which scared his dogs into rushing back to his side. Another man in the area claimed to have caught a fleeting glimpse of the creature, stating that it wasn't quite as big as a cow. This likely means it hadn't eaten a cow yet, and I'll explain why. You know how in cartoons, when a character eats something and takes the shape of that thing? Think along the lines of Jerry from Tom and Jerry eating a cheese and turning into a triangle. Okay, you got that visual? Good. So, basically that. In 1897, SANTER was spotted at Roaring River, apparently eating cats. Since this is apparently a feline-like creature, would it be a form of cannibalism if it eats a cat? Asking for a friend. Also in 1897, Santer was said to have been caught. It allegedly resembled a large sheepdog, but couldn't be definitively identified. And finally, in 1899, a woman allegedly spotted Santer as it ate 12 chickens, which is probably equivalent to like a quarter of a cow. These measurements will show up on the test, so pay attention. She claimed that Santer was gray and was roughly the size of an animal somewhat between a cat and a dog. Remember the dude from before who said it wasn't quite the size of a cow? Yeah, so this confirms it, because cats and dogs are generally not quite the size of cows either. So, yeah. Anyway, Santer sightings surged sporadically. Say that 5 times really fast. Until the 1920s. This cryptid is largely considered an urban legend, created by the burly lumberjacks of the area, likely from boredom caused by staring at trees all day, but we will likely never know for sure. That said, if you ever see a bald, ferret-looking cat monster with anal beads for a tail, you better pray to SpongeBob that you are not dressed in your favorite cow print threads. You've been warned. And number 5. Picture this. You're out for a walk, and you see a sign with a black stick figure on it, doing something that you're not supposed to do, because signs. Suddenly, the stick figure moves. You're scared, because that's not supposed to happen. After all, this isn't Harry Potter, so things on signs generally shouldn't move. This is a really dumbed down version of our last cryptid of the day, if it was a cryptid for ants. I am, of course, talking about black stickmen. This is a real thing that people apparently really see in non-drug and/or alcohol-induced hallucinations. Black stickmen are exactly as their name describes, being literal stickmen, like I described in my terrible hypothetical story. They allegedly range in height, going from the size of a regular-ass human to being freakishly large. BSM, not to be confused with BDSM, appear to be two-dimensional, though they always appear to look the same no matter what angle they're viewed at. Many who have encountered BSMs have said that they feel a sort of static electricity in the air and are overwhelmed with strange urges of anger and aggression. In short, giant, electrified black stick figures roam the world, blessing people with the gift of bad vibes. Cool beans! BSMs may be linked to shadow people, another form of cryptid too popular to be featured on my hipster list. There have been no records of BSMs attacking or even communicating in any way, which is probably a relief. The last thing we need is a sign warning of BSMs with a tiny BSM on the sign, thus creating more BSMs to attack people, warranting more signs, creating more BSMs, and so on. During an expedition, cryptozoologist and possible lizard man Mark Wolfgang Miller allegedly encountered a BSM near the town of Buford, Wyoming. He and his team are said to have come within 6 feet of the BSM before it moved. Per his description, the BSM was unbelievably tall and was razor thin. Miller stated, quote, "I didn't know I was looking at it until it moved in a non-tree-like manner. It had to be at least 12 feet tall." End quote. Miller then attempted to photograph the BSM, but because it was super thin, coupled with a backdrop of trees and other distracting things, in addition to the fact that it probably isn't real and Buddy was probably just out of his mind for a brief moment, the photo doesn't show anything BSM related. I mean, like, of course it didn't, but it's considered a cryptid nonetheless. And since you're here to listen to me mock lesser known cryptids for 10 to 30 minutes, I figured black stickmen were too funny to not be included on this tier's list. Thank you for listening to whatever the hell that just was. Hopefully you learned something about just how strange our world really is, and I look forward to sharing progressively more insane cryptids with you in the weeks to come. Away from civilization, things get strange and unsettling. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok to get the full, immersive, Strange Wilderness experience. Links to everything will be provided in the show notes. Thank you for listening, and stay safe. Because as you know, it can get wild out there.